Imagine building a machine so powerful, so unbelievably fast, that even the people who designed it became afraid of what they had created. Not because it exploded, not because it failed, but because it was pushing beyond the limits of what humans had ever driven before. This is the incredible story of the hypercar that shocked its own engineers. A machine built to chase one impossible dream: 300 miles per hour. For decades, the world's fastest cars battled for one title: the fastest production car on Earth. Ferrari pushed the boundaries of performance. Lamborghini focused on raw emotion. Porsche perfected precision. McLaren redefined lightweight engineering. Bugatti dominated with unbelievable speed. Every new generation arrived faster than the last. Yet one small company refused to accept second place. Its engineers believed they could create something the automotive world had never seen. A car that wasn't just faster, but smarter, lighter, more aerodynamic, more efficient. Every single component would be questioned. Every screw, every bolt, every carbon fiber panel. Nothing would remain ordinary. Months turned into years. Hundreds of computer simulations filled giant digital screens. Wind tunnels operated day and night. Prototype after prototype was redesigned. Whenever the engineers solved one problem, another appeared. More power created more heat. More speed created more lift. More downforce created more drag. The faster the dream became, the more impossible it seemed. Some experts quietly suggested the project should be abandoned. They believed no road-legal car could remain stable beyond 300 miles per hour. Physics itself appeared to be standing in the way. But giving up was never an option. The engineers had already invested thousands of hours chasing perfection. Failure simply wasn't acceptable. Finally, after years of development, the first complete prototype rolled out of the factory. Silent, beautiful, aggressive. Every person inside the workshop stopped what they were doing. No one spoke. They simply stared, because they knew history was about to be tested. But no one could have predicted what would happen when the accelerator touched the floor for the very first time. The prototype looked incredible, but appearance meant nothing. The real challenge was hidden beneath its carbon fiber body. Every gram mattered. Every curve had a purpose. Every component had to survive forces that ordinary sports cars would never experience. The engineers knew one thing: if they wanted to cross the 300-mile-per-hour barrier, they couldn't rely on traditional engineering. They had to reinvent almost everything. The heart of the machine. At the center of the hypercar sat a massive twin-turbocharged engine. Thousands of hours were spent increasing its power while making sure it could survive extreme temperatures. As horsepower climbed higher and higher, so did the risks. More power meant more heat. More heat meant more stress. And more stress meant even the smallest mistake could destroy the entire engine in seconds. Every piston, every turbocharger, every cooling pipe was redesigned again and again. Nothing was accepted until it proved itself under impossible conditions. The carbon fiber revolution. Power alone wasn't enough. Weight was the real enemy. The engineers replaced traditional materials with aerospace-grade carbon fiber. The chassis became incredibly light, yet unbelievably strong. It could absorb tremendous forces while keeping the driver protected. Even tiny brackets that normally weighed several kilograms were redesigned to save just a few hundred grams. To most people, the difference seemed insignificant. To engineers chasing world records, every gram counted. Fighting the air, at speeds above 250 miles per hour, the greatest enemy isn't the engine, it's the air itself. A tiny movement in airflow can make a car unstable. A slight lift at the front could send millions of dollars and a driver's life into disaster. Weeks turned into months inside enormous wind tunnels. Hundreds of aerodynamic parts were tested. Front splitters, massive rear diffusers, active wings, hidden air channels. Even the side mirrors were reshaped dozens of times. The goal wasn't just speed. It was stability. The biggest problem. Finally, everything seemed ready. The simulations predicted success. The engine delivered unbelievable power. The aerodynamics looked perfect. The prototype rolled toward its first full-speed test. Inside the control room, engineers watched dozens of live data screens. Heart rates increased. Nobody spoke. Then, the driver pressed the accelerator. Within seconds, the hypercar accelerated harder than anyone expected. The numbers climbed. 100, 180, 220, 260 miles per hour. And suddenly, the engineers noticed something terrifying on their monitors. A tiny vibration that wasn't supposed to exist. At those speeds, even the smallest vibration could become catastrophic. The celebration instantly turned into panic. The test had to be stopped immediately. But what caused the vibration would surprise everyone. The control room fell completely silent. Just moments earlier, the engineers had been celebrating. Now, every eye was fixed on a single flashing warning. The hypercar was still accelerating. The speedometer had already passed 260 miles per hour. But something wasn't right. Tiny vibrations had appeared in the telemetry data. At normal speeds, they would have been insignificant. At nearly 300 miles per hour, they could become deadly. The test driver remained calm. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel and waited for instructions. The emergency decision. Inside the control room, engineers analyzed thousands of live data points every second. Engine temperatures, suspension movement, tire pressure, aerodynamic balance. Everything looked normal. Except for one number. The vibration was increasing. Slowly, but consistently. The chief engineer made the difficult decision. Abort the run. The message reached the driver instantly. Without hesitation, he lifted off the throttle. Power dropped. The active rear wing automatically adjusted to create maximum stability. Massive carbon ceramic brakes began slowing the car. Even the braking process was carefully calculated. At those incredible speeds, stopping too aggressively could create another dangerous situation. Several long seconds later, the hypercar rolled safely back into the pit lane. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but nobody was celebrating anymore. Searching for the cause, the engineers immediately surrounded the prototype. Body panels were removed. Sensors were checked. Every bolt, suspension arm, and aerodynamic component was inspected. Hours turned into an all-night investigation. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then one engineer noticed something almost impossible to see. A microscopic imbalance in one rotating component. It was measured in fractions of a millimeter. At city speeds, it would never have mattered. At nearly 300 miles per hour, that tiny imperfection created vibrations powerful enough to affect the entire vehicle. It was an incredible reminder of just how unforgiving extreme engineering can be. When a car travels faster than many airplanes during takeoff, perfection isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. Back to the drawing board. The team refused to compromise. Instead of accepting the flaw, they redesigned the affected components. The suspension was recalibrated. The wheels were balanced with even greater precision. Aerodynamic settings were fine-tuned. Weeks of additional computer simulations followed. Then, more wind tunnel testing, more track testing, more sleepless nights. The engineers weren't chasing speed anymore. They were chasing confidence. Only when every system worked flawlessly would they attempt another record run. And when that day finally arrived, the automotive world would witness something truly extraordinary. A speed no production car had ever officially reached before. Weeks of redesign, thousands of new simulations, hundreds of hours of testing. Everything had led to this moment. The tiny vibration that once threatened the entire project had been eliminated. Now, there was only one question left. Could the hypercar finally break the 300-mile-per-hour barrier? Before sunrise, The team gathered at a private high-speed proving ground. The air was cool. The wind was calm. Perfect conditions. No one smiled. Everyone understood the risks. Years of work would be judged in just a few minutes. The record attempt begins. The driver climbed into the cockpit and closed the lightweight carbon fiber door. The engine came to life with a deep, thunderous roar. Inside the control room, engineers watched dozens of live telemetry screens. A final radio message echoed through the headset. "Systems are green. You are clear for the run." The driver pressed the accelerator. The launch was explosive. The car rocketed forward with unbelievable force. 60 miles per hour. In what felt like an instant. 100. Then 150. The scenery became a blur. The active aerodynamics constantly adjusted themselves, keeping the car planted to the ground. Every movement was controlled by advanced computers, making thousands of calculations every second. Approaching the limit. The speed continued to climb. 200 miles per hour. The engine sounded effortless. 240. The tires remained perfectly stable. 260. The steering stayed incredibly precise. Then, 280 miles per hour. Inside the cockpit, the world became strangely quiet. The only sounds were the engine, the rushing air, and the driver's breathing. Every tiny steering correction mattered. At this speed, even a small mistake could have catastrophic consequences. History is made. The digital speed display kept climbing. 290, 295. Every engineer held their breath. Then, the impossible happened. 300 miles per hour. Cheers erupted inside the control room. Some engineers jumped from their seats. Others simply stared at the screens in disbelief. Years of sacrifice. Sleepless nights. Failed prototypes. Every setback had led to this unforgettable moment. The hypercar had achieved what many experts once believed was impossible. But the celebration didn't last long. As the driver slowed the car and returned to the garage, the engineers noticed something unexpected. One final challenge remained, and solving it would determine whether the record could become official. The team had done it. The speedometer had crossed the legendary 300-mile-per-hour mark. Inside the garage, engineers celebrated what looked like the greatest achievement in the company's history. But as the excitement settled, a quiet voice broke the silence. "We need to check the data one more time." The room instantly became serious again. Because in engineering, speed means nothing without safety. And every record must survive careful inspection. The data never lies. The engineers downloaded millions of pieces of telemetry collected during the run. Every second of the drive had been recorded. Engine temperature, brake pressure, suspension movement, turbo boost, aerodynamic balance, tire temperature, even tiny steering corrections made by the driver. Nothing escaped the computers. Hours passed as specialists analyzed every detail. At first, everything looked nearly perfect. Then one graph caught everyone's attention. The rear tires had reached temperatures far beyond expectations. Not enough to fail, but high enough to raise serious questions. Could the tires survive another run? Could they remain safe at even higher speeds? No one wanted to guess. Lives depended on the answer. A new challenge. The engineering team contacted tire specialists immediately. Together, they began another round of testing. New rubber compounds were developed. Different internal constructions were evaluated. Each tire was placed inside high-speed testing machines that simulated incredible forces. At more than 300 miles per hour, each tire was spinning thousands of times every minute. The centrifugal forces were enormous. A tiny manufacturing defect, almost invisible to the human eye, could lead to catastrophic failure. This wasn't simply about making a faster tire. It was about building one that could survive conditions almost no road car had ever experienced. Pushing engineering even further. Weeks later, the improved tires arrived. They looked almost identical to the originals, but inside, everything had changed. Stronger materials, improved cooling, higher structural strength. Every detail had been refined. The engineers smiled, not because they had reached perfection, but because they were getting closer. Now, nothing stood between the hypercar and one final attempt. The attempt that would determine whether this machine would become a legend or simply another ambitious experiment. The entire automotive world was watching. And the final test was about to begin. The morning had finally arrived. Years of engineering, thousands of design changes, countless sleepless nights. Everything came down to one final run. There would be no second chance. The weather was perfect. The track was clear. Every system had been checked twice. The driver took one last deep breath. Inside the control room, dozens of engineers stared silently at the live telemetry screens. One simple message came through the radio. You are cleared for the final run, the ultimate acceleration. The driver pressed the accelerator to the floor. The twin turbocharged engine unleashed its full power. The hypercar exploded forward. Within seconds, 60 miles per hour. Then, 120. The acceleration never seemed to slow. The active suspension adjusted itself hundreds of times every second. The aerodynamic wings constantly changed position to keep the car perfectly balanced. Every computer inside the vehicle worked together as one intelligent system. The car felt less like a machine and more like a living organism. Crossing into history, the digital speed display climbed higher than ever before. 200 miles per hour. The steering remained steady. 250. The engine sounded smooth and effortless. 280. The airflow wrapped around the body exactly as engineers had predicted. Then, 300 miles per hour. But this time, the driver kept accelerating. 305, 310. Inside the control room, nobody moved. Every engineer watched the screens in complete disbelief. The numbers continued climbing. The impossible had become reality. The hypercar had officially entered a speed range once thought unreachable for a road-legal production vehicle. Years of determination had defeated doubt. The finish line. After several unforgettable seconds, the driver gently lifted off the throttle. The active aerodynamic systems automatically shifted into braking mode. Massive carbon ceramic brakes slowed the vehicle with incredible stability. The hypercar rolled back into the pit lane. Silence. Then, thunderous applause filled the garage. Some engineers hugged each other. Others wiped away tears. Many had spent nearly a decade working toward this single moment. For them, this wasn't just another speed record. It was proof that impossible dreams can become reality through relentless engineering. The world soon celebrated the achievement. News headlines spread across the globe. Automotive enthusiasts couldn't believe the numbers. Manufacturers around the world suddenly had a new benchmark. The race for speed had entered an entirely new era. But perhaps the greatest achievement wasn't the record itself. It was the courage to keep going when everyone else believed it couldn't be done. Breaking records was only the beginning. Once the world saw what this incredible machine could do, demand exploded. Collectors from around the globe began calling the manufacturer billionaires, royal families, celebrities. Some even offered to pay double the asking price. But they all received the same answer. No, because this wasn't an ordinary production car. It was one of the rarest hypercars ever created. More than just money. Most people believe buying a hypercar is simple. If you have enough money, you can own one. But at this level, money is only the first requirement. Manufacturers carefully choose who receives an invitation to purchase. They study a buyer's history, their car collection, their relationship with the company, even how they care for the vehicles they already own. Some customers spend years building trust before they are offered the chance to buy a limited edition model. Others are never invited at all. For these companies, protecting the brand's legacy is more important than making another sale. Built in tiny numbers. Unlike ordinary sports cars built by the thousands, this hypercar was produced in an extremely limited quantity. Every vehicle required months of hand assembly. Master technicians inspected every carbon fiber panel. Every engine was tested by hand. Every interior was finished using premium leather, polished aluminum, and handcrafted details. No two cars were exactly alike. Owners could customize nearly every surface. Unique paint colors, special stitching, personal engravings, even custom luggage designed to match the interior. Each car became a one-of-one masterpiece, hidden from the world. Ironically, most people will never see one in real life. Many owners keep them inside climate-controlled private garages. The cars are cleaned regularly, maintained by factory-trained technicians, driven only on rare occasions. Some travel to exclusive automotive events. Others remain hidden for years, not because they cannot be driven, but because they have become priceless collector's pieces. Their value continues to grow. Auction experts believe some of these hypercars could eventually be worth several times their original price. For collectors, owning one isn't simply about driving. It's about preserving automotive history. The final chapter begins. The hypercar had already rewritten the rules of engineering. It had broken speed records, captured the imagination of millions, and become one of the most exclusive machines ever built. But one final question remained. What kind of legacy would it leave behind? Would future generations remember it only for its incredible speed, or for proving that impossible dreams can become reality? The answer would shape the future of every hypercar that followed. The record had been set. The headlines had spread across the world. The engineers finally had time to reflect on what they had accomplished. It wasn't just another fast car. It was proof that determination, innovation, and courage could push beyond limits that once seemed impossible. The hypercar had done more than break a speed record. It had changed the future of automotive engineering forever, inspiring a new generation. Soon after the record was announced, manufacturers around the world took notice. Engineering teams returned to their design studios with a new challenge: build something even better. Every major performance brand began investing more heavily in lightweight materials, more advanced aerodynamics, smarter electronic control systems, more efficient engines. The race was no longer just about horsepower. It became a race of intelligence. Who could design the most efficient machine? Who could make the safest car at extreme speeds? Who could master the invisible force of air? The record had inspired an entirely new generation of hypercars. Beyond speed. But perhaps the greatest lesson wasn't about speed at all. The engineers learned that true performance comes from balance. Power means nothing without control. Acceleration means nothing without stability. And records mean nothing if safety is ignored. Every successful innovation was built on thousands of small improvements. Tiny adjustments that most people would never notice. Yet together, they created something extraordinary. That is what separates great engineering from ordinary engineering. The human story. Behind every world record, there are people. Designers who never stop sketching. Engineers who refused to give up after failures. Mechanics who worked through countless nights. Professional drivers who trusted a machine traveling faster than almost anything on the road. Every achievement was built by a team, not by one person. Their dedication transformed an impossible dream into reality. Final message. Today, that hypercar remains one of the greatest engineering achievements ever created. Not because it was the fastest, but because it inspired everyone who believed impossible goals were worth chasing. Its story reminds us that every breakthrough begins with a question: what if? And every great invention begins with someone willing to ignore the words, "It can't be done." The next generation of hypercars will be faster, smarter, more advanced. But they will always owe something to the pioneers who dared to challenge the impossible. Because legends are not remembered only for their numbers. They are remembered for changing history. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible stories from the world of automotive engineering. Until next time, stay curious and keep chasing the impossible.